The purpose of today's lesson is to talk about cell division and reproduction, the process of making new cells and the process of making new organisms. All cells spend their time in what's called the life cycle, or the cell cycle, which is the life cycle of a cell. It allows the cell to grow, develop, copy its DNA, and then eventually divide into new cells. This happens in two ways. There's one type of cell division called mitosis. Mitosis happens in body cells. The way I remember this is I think mitosis happens in mitoses. Mitoses have blood, bone, muscle, skin, nerves. Those are all cells that when they reproduce need to have exact copies of their original cell so that our toes all have the same type of cell they had originally. So this ultimately starts with a parent cell that has 46 chromosomes. The cell duplicates the DNA, so it has 92 chromosomes, and then it divides. When it divides, the two new cells are identical to the parent cell, and those two cells have 46 chromosomes, just like the parent cell originally did. The reason that it would do this is to allow an organism to grow, develop, repair, or if it's a single-celled organism, it's going to do this so that it can reproduce. The other type of cell division is meiosis. Meiosis is going to happen for only reproductive cells, sperm or egg. This is a similar process, except it divides a second time from what mitosis did. It starts with a parent cell that has 46 chromosomes, doubles the DNA to 92 chromosomes, and then divides, so it has 46 chromosomes again. But then it divides a second time so that each of the new cells has 23 chromosomes. This is just for humans. If I'm in a fish, I'm going to have a different number of resulting chromosomes, but it'll still be half of the original chromosomes as the parent cell did. This is what allows for us to have so much variation in our species, is the new cells are completely unique from what the original cell was. The only time this is going to happen is for sexual reproduction. So in order for an organism to be able to reproduce with another partner. So why do cells need to divide? If I'm a unicellular organism, this is important in order to reproduce. I need to divide so that I can make more of my own species. If I'm a multicellular organism, I need to reproduce so that I can grow taller or bigger, so that I can develop. If I'm a frog, I might need to grow legs or lose a tail. If I'm a butterfly, I need to change my cells so that I go from a caterpillar into a butterfly. I might need to repair my paper cut or a broken bone. Or I might need to divide so that I can reproduce, and that would be meiosis happening for our reproductive cells. So let's go through the four main important reasons for cell division that go along with mostly mitosis, but also meiosis. So if I'm going to grow, the reason I need to be able to go through cell division is that cells can't just expand to become as big as a person. They only get so big, just like a balloon can only get so big. And so for larger organisms, they need to divide so that they have more cells to make up their larger body. In order to develop, they need to be able to specialize. So all organisms, single-celled or multicell, start as a single cell. But as a multicellular organism becomes bigger, those cells start to specialize and get specific jobs. When those cells specialize and get specific jobs, they're able to become more complex. They're able to have skin cells and bone cells and muscle cells and brain cells and nerve cells. And that's where dividing to allow the organism to develop is important. I also need to make sure that my body can repair an injury. So if I get injured, if I get a paper cut or a scratch, I need to be able to go through mitosis to make new cells. And if I can make new cells, it's going to allow me to stay healthy and maintain homeostasis. If I get older, or as my cells get older, such as skin cells, they're going to die and slough off, which means they need to be replaced so that we continue to have skin. We would look awfully goofy if all of our cells sloughed away and we were left just with muscle on our outside layer. Finally, cell division is important for reproduction. In order for a species to survive, it has to be able to reproduce. And in order for it to reproduce, it has to go through either mitosis, if I'm a single-celled organism, or meiosis to create those sex cells if I'm a multi-celled organism. So there's two different types of reproduction. If I'm a single-celled organism, I'm going to go through what we call asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction has just one parent organism. The parent organism goes through mitosis to create an exact copy of itself. These are usually single-celled organisms, and they don't need to go through meiosis. They only need to go through mitosis. This would be something like budding, regeneration, binary fission. Organisms such as bacteria would go through this. So asexual reproduction has some advantages. They only need one parent. They don't need a lot of energy in order to do this. They don't have to spend time going out to find a mate. And so because they're not having to spend the energy finding a mate, it also takes less time in order for the reproduction to happen. Some disadvantages, or the main disadvantage, is that the offspring end up being identical to their parent cell, meaning that they're not going to have any genetic diversity in their population. Sexual reproduction involves two parent cells, a sperm and an egg. Any organism that has a mom and a dad is going to go through sexual reproduction. This might be an animal or a plant, but it's usually going to be multicellular organisms. And in order for them to go through sexual reproduction, their body has to go through mitosis first to make all the cells that they need. And then their sex cells need to go through meiosis. So there's one main advantage to sexual reproduction, and that's that the offspring end up being unique because of meiosis, which gives us such a variety in our population in characteristics. But some disadvantages are that they need two parents, which requires energy to find another parent, and it takes a lot more time than if I can just divide and clone myself like I could with asexual reproduction. They're also similar in a few ways. Ultimately, both types of reproduction produce offspring. They both require some energy, and ultimately, they both need at least one parent in order for them to happen. But it doesn't always happen perfectly. Sometimes there's a problem, and we call this problem a mutation. And a mutation happens in the DNA. It's when the wrong instructions end up being given. This might happen because the DNA has a change in its base pairs, and that could be it can cause simple errors. Sometimes it just happens, and sometimes our environment causes this to happen. So this might be X-rays, radioactive material, the sun, UV rays, or maybe something toxic that we've come in contact with. In class, we're going to discuss what ends up happening or what the result of a mutation is in each organism. So overall, organisms have to go through cell division in order for an organism to survive and grow and reproduce. There's two types, mitosis and meiosis. They go through two different types of reproduction depending on what type of organism I am. It's going to go through asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. And sometimes a mistake happens when that reproduction occurs in the DNA, and that's called a mutation, which will be where we're going with the rest of our unit.